Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my ridiculous neighbor claims I don't deserve my house because I am single and don't have a family. She then demands that I hand over my property to her pregnant daughter, who clearly deserves it more, according to her. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is a malicious compliance story. You would not believe the day I had at work. I've been a mechanic at this small car dealership for years now. It is just me in the attached service garage and I'm the only licensed tech they've got. Now, I'm used to dealing with some of the male customers giving me a hard time since I am a woman. They will second guess my diagnosis, hover over me while I'm under the hood or check my work before they drive off the lot. Really annoying, but whatever, I try to avoid dealing with them directly when I can. I will get the apprentice to pull their cars in and out for me. Anyway, this particular morning was a real doozy. We were slammed and short-staffed and the lot kid and my apprentice were tied up washing cars for delivery, running to a customer's house. My service advisor, who is a woman too, left me a work order and keys. Just a quick 10-minute software update in and out. So I hustle out to the service area to grab the car and I see the customer sitting there as I walk by with his keys. The guy immediately jumps up looking all alarmed. I don't have time to chat, so I breeze right past him and out the door. According to my advisor, here's the conversation I missed. Customer: hold on, who's that woman? Is she gonna be working on my car? I don't want her touching my vehicle. Advisor: sorry sir, but our other tech is out right now. If you wanna wait for a male mechanic, it's gonna be quite a while. Customer: fine by me, I'll wait for a guy. I don't want that girl messing with my car, period. Advisor, all polite: understood sir. So I pull his car back out, drop the keys and work order on the counter. No skin off my back, I've got plenty of other work to do. Half an hour goes by, I'm going about my day pulling cars in and out. My apprentice is still off on his errand. But now this customer, he is hawking the door like a dang watchdog, checking out every single person who walks in. Our high school co-op student comes in to get a form signed. Customer's keys are still sitting there untouched. It's been about an hour now and the customer goes, "Hey, what's the holdup? Why hasn't my car gone in? Let this young guy take care of it." Advisor explains, "I'm sorry sir, but he's only a co-op student. For liability and insurance reasons, he's not allowed to drive the vehicles." The customer ain't having it. "So, have someone else pull it in the garage and he can do the update. This is supposed to be a quick 10-minute thing. Come on here." Advisor clarifies, "Again, I apologize sir, but he's a high school student. He's not authorized to do any actual work, especially not a warranty job. Recalls can only be done by licensed techs and apprentices." Just then, the car jockey gets back. Advisor hands him keys to a different car, he brings it into the shop for me. The customer is getting madder by the minute watching this all go down. Customer starts ranting, "I've been here over an hour. I watched you pull 5 cars in before mine. My appointment was at 8 AM. This is unacceptable." And so on. Finally he says he doesn't care who does it, but it has to be a man. Won't budge, so the advisor, she starts listing off the names of every dude in the building. Well, there's John, but he's the car jockey, doesn't actually work on cars. And there's Jeff, except he's 17, still in high school. Honestly, I sure would not want him doing a recall on my car. We could also ask Bob, but he's the parts guy. No clue how to use the diagnostic tools. Oh, and by the way, we've got male detailers too, but they don't know a damn thing about vehicle mechanics. By now, this guy is steaming, super mad, demands to see the manager. So the boss comes out of his office and takes the customer into the garage, lights up a smoke, takes a long drag, points right at me and goes, "See her? That's my top mechanic. These fellas here, they take orders from her. So here's the deal. You can wait for her to finish what she's doing and see if she's still willing to get to your car, or you can take your keys and scram. Your choice." I kid you not, this fool was shook. He grabbed his keys and hightailed it out of here. 2 hours utterly wasted, all because he could not handle a woman working on his precious car. Good riddance, I say. Not like he was a big loss for the business. I gotta say though, that manager of mine, he always had my back 100%, and my advisor, she's got a sense of humor drier than the Sahara. She knew damn well my apprentice would not be back for at least an hour, and that none of those other guys could do diddly squat on a recall, but hey, that is life as a female mechanic. You get your share of sexist pics. Thank God for bosses and co-workers who don't put up with that nonsense. We've sure dealt with our fair share of it, and we've got our ways of handling it. Gotta have a little fun with it sometimes, you know. Anyway, that's my crazy story for the day. Just another day in the glamorous life of a lady grease monkey. Never a dull moment in this line of work, I'll tell you what. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, OP and the boss and the manager involved handled this situation perfectly. Props to them. Honestly, I don't give a damn who works on my car, or rather motorcycle, because I'm not a big car guy. If the person is qualified, then it really doesn't matter whether it is a guy or a woman. Let me know what you think in the comments. Either way, the next one is the title story, and it's titled "Entitled Neighbor Demands I Give Her Daughter My House Because She Is Pregnant." I'm quite fortunate with where I live. I'll start off with that. As my parents got older and moved into a bungalow, they left me the house I grew up in, which is where I decided to continue living. It's a family-oriented street. I'm the only person who lives on their own. And nobody on the street is bothered by this. After all, most of them knew me as a child anyway, and we all get along great. Well, all except for my next door neighbor, who moved in around 6 months ago. Bringing her baggage and problems with her. There was not much of an issue at the start, but she did call around at one point with quite an odd issue. "Hello dear, I've moved in next door," she said as I opened the door. "Ah, lovely, it's nice to meet you. Hope you like the area." "Yes, it's very nice. I was just wondering why you and your family haven't called around. It's a little rude, no?" Sorry I guess? I didn't want to intrude and oh, it's just me here." "Just you living in this house?" Okay, anyway, bye now." And off she went. So yeah, slightly weird, but nothing crazy. Anyway, I didn't hear anything of her for the next couple of months, only bits and pieces from my other neighbors who didn't openly say they disliked her, but slightly insinuated such. Having heard nothing from this neighbor for 4 months, imagine my surprise when 2 months ago, she came banging on my door at 1 AM. "Hello?" I asked, opening the door as I rubbed my eyes. "She's pregnant!" my neighbor screeched, holding the arm of her crying daughter, who looked no older than 18. Okay? I asked, worried momentarily that for whatever reason she thought I was the father. "She cannot live with me. Our home is not fit for raising babies." "Okay?" I repeated. "We need this house," she sighed. What? Was I still dreaming? "Your house is much better for raising a family in. She will need to live here. We will give you $100,000 for it." I stood there in shock. I was so confused. Where had all this come from, and why did she feel so entitled to my house? "I'm sorry, but my house is not for sale. It's worth much more than that anyway." "What do you mean you're not selling?" she demanded, and then proceeded to explain all over again that her daughter is pregnant and that my house is perfect for her and her new family. This back and forth continued for at least an hour. It was getting nowhere, and we were beginning to wake up the rest of the street. "Look, you're single. You have no family here? Why do you need this house?" She had begun to turn the conversation into more of an attack at me. "I live here. End of story." Her daughter was still wailing. She was getting angrier by the second, ranting that my home was a better environment for a baby and that I needed to be neighborly or something. She also insisted that $100,000 was more than fair for it. Which, if you know anything about the current housing market, you will all know that is most definitely not fair. They eventually left, only to come back a couple hours later, clearly not ready to give up yet. "Sign over the deeds to your house," my neighbor said as calm as ever. "No?" I replied with a sigh, overly fed up at this point. My neighbor was silent, staring me down with a look that could kill. "Look, I'm sorry, but you're not entitled to my home. It's my legal property and it will remain as such until I deem it an appropriate time to sell." I then proceeded to slam the door and go back to bed, although I did not get much sleep as I was fuming at the audacity of her. For the next couple of weeks, my neighbor harassed me constantly. She would come knocking at all hours of the day to shout at me and cause an absolute scene. She even started writing to the council saying they needed to have my property rights revoked or something like that. Obviously, nothing was working. Of course, her main weapon was just simply spreading the drama around, but all it did was cause her to be one of the most disliked people in the area. I'll be honest, it was more than just annoying. I wasn't getting enough sleep, it made me anxious and a little scared, to be honest. So, after having a sit down with some of my other neighbors, they advised me to file a complaint. So that is what I did. I live in a homeowner association, by the way, so I made a complaint through them. They informed me that she had received multiple complaints from people over the same situation already, and it turns out that she had been harassing people to get them to harass me, which of course they didn't. Anyway, they advised and asked if I would take up a report with the police. I rang the non-emergency line and documented the entire incident with them. That same day, I headed out and installed security cameras as my neighbor had begun making threats to damage my property, something she had told me to my face and in the form of nasty letters she would post through my door. Whether the threats were empty or not, I wanted the cameras to capture her constant harassment. A few more weeks went by and she was still harassing me. Hand over the deeds or we will make your life hell. You don't deserve this house, it's made for a family. Were her usual quotes of the day. Even her daughter was not on her side, claiming her and her boyfriend had already found a little apartment to rent out. She came around on her own one day to apologize for her mom's behavior and let it slip that she'd been trying to move out for years and get away from her mother. No way would she even want to remain next door. Look, before you start, this is getting too far. Nobody around here has a good image of you built up in their heads. You have been non-stop harassing me and I filed a complaint with the police. If they haven't come around already, they will. I was the first to speak this time as I opened the door. Ha! The police don't scare me. They've come around alright, you little snitch. What are they gonna do? Arrest me for advocating for my rights? I just slammed the door. I had enough with her harassment and self-entitlement. What rights did she have that meant she could behave in this way? I didn't even want to ask, it would be some other made-up nonsense. I went upstairs and sent all the footage I'd gathered to the police, linking it to the complaint I made. I also added the one just then, where she admits having been warned by the police, but then continues to harass. I ended up getting a restraining order on her, which was no bother at all given all the footage against her. After that, I did not get any more physical harassment from her. If I saw her across the street, she could scream some things at me, but at least she's not coming around anymore. I saw the police go round to her house and clearly they scared some sense into her. I do still get the odd angry letter, most of which I don't even bother to read. In a couple of weeks, her daughter will be giving birth, and from what she has told me when I saw her the other day, she has packed all her stuff and is ready to move out. Her mom doesn't know, so that will be interesting. I told her that I would be more than happy to be on standby when she breaks the news. I get the impression that she is scared of her mother, and I know that sort of atmosphere is not good for anyone, let alone someone pregnant. Due to the dislike by the local population, I highly doubt my neighbor will be living here much longer. For my own sake, I really hope that's true. I want to enjoy living in a peaceful neighborhood where I grew up and not be worrying about my neighbor and whether or not she'll randomly decide to start harassing me again. For now, I can only hope she knows better than to try anything, but who knows what she is planning. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. And by the way, if you have enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and maybe even leave a comment again, since that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. When I, female, was 15, my mom and dad got divorced. It was an insane relief to me as my dad was extremely mentally, verbally and physically abusive. All was well for a while and I had very little contact with my dad. Of course, that did not last long. He started poking around more and demanding I come visit him. As much as I didn't want to, my mom pleaded with me to suck it up and go see him as he was sending her constant, hurtful and threatening texts. I begrudgingly went to see him. When I arrived, he told me to get in the car. He wouldn't tell me where we were going and my stomach began to churn. We pulled into the parking lot of Walmart, where he told me to pick out all of the toiletries I would need at his house. I told him I was fine and then he told me that I would be staying at his house every other week. I immediately began to panic as none of this had been discussed previously. I knew that the law stated that because of my age I got to choose who I stayed with, but he always had a way of getting around things. When I got home that night, I sobbed to my mom about the endeavor and pleaded with her to not make me stay there. She was shocked as she had not had any discussion about this, but she assured me I did not have to stay there. I informed my father of this and he didn't reply to me. A few weeks later, I got a text from him demanding that I come out to his house to clean my room. I knew this was another ploy to force me to visit, so I brushed it off as long as I could. A week later, he told me I would need to clean my room or he would be throwing everything I own away. When my mom and I had originally left, I only had time to pack a small suitcase, so all of my sentimental items, a majority of my clothes, and my siblings' remaining stuff was still in the room. I was furious that he would threaten to do this, but then I saw my opportunity for revenge. I set up a date and time to come clean my room. I did not say a word to my dad when I got to the house and I got to work. I packed up everything I owned into some boxes and slid them out of the window. I then crawled out and loaded them into my car so he would not be suspicious. Then I cleaned the now empty room within an inch of its life. I took down every picture on the wall. I stripped the bedding, vacuumed, cleaned the windows inside and out, and even scrubbed the walls. The room was spotless. I left no stone unturned as I knew he would try to find something I missed, so I would have to come back. I could have just left then, but I had a moment of bravery and decided to ask him to check the room. He happily agreed and I watched his face go from confused to angry to cold. It was so satisfying. He looked at me and said, "So I'm assuming you're not coming back." I just smiled at him and left. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So, like most of her kind, this Karen hated me for the simple reason of jealousy. My house and property were nicer than hers and she was never able to get over that fact. I knew that it burned her up when she had company and they would stop to look at my property and make comments about how nice it looked. Most of the reasoning stemmed from Karen simply not taking care of her property, while the rest sat with mine just being bigger. Just looking at the external of our homes, I made sure to plant beautiful flowers of various colors for the reason that it brings me joy. I also make sure my trees, scrubs and lawn are cut and maintained. Karen is too busy worrying about how she looks, so while her property is not overgrown or anything, it just looks basic and boring. There does not seem to be any life going on from the outside, so naturally people's eyes get drawn to mine. Another thing Karen hates is that my property was large enough to get a pool installed in the back, while she would never be able to have that kind of space. I don't try and gloat or show off that I have more than Karen either, she is just internally doing all of this. While some people would be jealous and just sit and stew on the whole thing, Karen is not like that. She needs to act out because of it, and her favorite method of that is trying to get me in trouble for some reason. She has called so many different departments to try and get me in trouble for things that don't actually exist. I don't know if she thinks they won't actually come and check on things before blindly giving me fines or arresting me. These kinds of departments do come when there is a complaint and see if it is valid before doing anything. For example, she called the health department on me claiming that I was living in a squalor and rats and other vermin were overtaking the house. They came and checked both the outside and inside of my property to see that it was clean and neat. Of course, it was not perfect or anything, since the house is being lived in. A salsa stain on a couch cushion and my desk being a mess of papers was hardly a health hazard though. And then there was the time she decided to call CPS on me, which I have to admit was one of the funniest things that has ever happened. They came to tell me there had been reports of child abuse in the home and they had to check it out. They looked all over the house to make sure that things were safe while shutting me up every time I tried to get a word in. It was not until the question portion of the visit that I got to explain to them that I could not possibly be abusing my children because I did not have any. Karen literally knew so little that she tried to get kids that I did not even have taken away from me. The CPS person apologized for cutting me off from telling them sooner. She must have been getting frustrated that none of her plans were working. It was the summer and I decided to sunbathe in the pool. I had bought basically an inflatable reclined chair so I could be both on the water but not in it. I was wearing a bikini and just reading a book, having a drink and taking in some sun. It was my day off work and I was gonna make sure that I got the most out of it. It was almost like she could sense that I was enjoying myself because it did not take long for her to look over the fence and start screaming at me from her backyard. I got a locked gate, or I'm sure she would have just walked into my yard to yell at me instead. "Karen, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Me, enjoying my day off and getting yelled at by you for no reason. "You cannot be out in public wearing something like that. You're exposing yourself and children live in the neighborhood." Me, actually I am in the privacy of my own backyard. The only person that can see me is you, and that's because you're nosy. "Karen, I'm gonna make sure you're punished for this." She walked away, and as you can tell, I've lost all patience and politeness when it comes to Karen. I will just give it right back to her and let her know that I think she's just being an entitled witch. I had no idea who she was gonna call, but I didn't think that it would be the police. I expected another random department to be at my house at some point for a dangerous pool or some other stupid thing. They came to my gate and knocked on it before saying it was police and to let them in. I got out of the pool and opened the gate to let them into the yard. I was curious to know what Karen said to get them to come so quickly. Me, "Is there a problem, officer?" "Officer, we got a report that you were exposing yourself in front of children." Me, "I was in my backyard sunbathing in my pool." That locked gate is the only way in besides going through the house, so no kids could get in even if they wanted. Karen was now back peeking over the fence. "Karen, you have to arrest that woman. She is naked on public property and I want her arrested for indecent exposure and trespassing." "Officer, ma'am, please return to your home and let us handle this." He then turns to me. "Officer, so you've been back here the entire time by yourself?" "Yes, I even have cameras if you want to see." "No need, your story seems to check out." "And you're the owner of this property?" Me, "Yes." "Me and my husband own the home." "Officer, and that is what you've been wearing the entire time you were outside, yeah?" Yes. Okay, well, everything seems to check out. Enjoy the rest of the day. I guess Karen had been listening on her side of the fence because when she heard the police were just going to leave, she got pissed off. She was mad that I was not being arrested and insisted that a bikini was me being naked, and if she could see me, that meant children could too. The officer told her that if she didn't want to see, she shouldn't be peeking at me over the fence. It was hard for me not to laugh at that moment. Despite it being a little funny, I was at my wit's end with Karen. I knew that if I did not do something soon, I was gonna end up with police or somebody else coming to my house all the time. I wanted to relax in my life, but that wasn't possible with the looming threat of my house being examined or police showing up at any given time. All it would take is one case of bad timing for a misunderstanding to occur. If I got drunk and Karen made some claim that I was driving and I couldn't refute it. I did not want to live that way. I was gonna get some grade A revenge on Karen, but first I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. First I thought about maybe ruining her job so that she might end up having to just move away from me. I knew what she did because she never stopped talking about it and trying to drag other people into it. That's right, she was part of a pyramid scheme and I think she was too dumb to even realize it. She kept getting sucked into them too because she always tried to go to everybody and get them to either purchase from her or join in too. And every single time it was a different kind of product. It was her husband bringing in the real money, but he was not mean, so I didn't want to try and ruin his life and career too. So then I had to think of something else creative in order to get back at her. It was about a week later when the idea came to me and I loved the irony of it. I was gonna find some reason to call a department on her so she would be the one with people coming to her door for a change. Unlike what she does though, I was gonna find a legitimate reason that would actually get her in trouble. I had no idea of what, but a person like Karen for sure was doing something that she shouldn't have been. I just had to find out what it was and then capitalize on it. I finally got my ammo when I overheard her talking on the phone outside to one of her friends. She was bragging about a secret bank account that she was putting her husband's money in instead of paying bills like she was supposed to. She was stealing his money and planning on using it to leave him. To make things worse, she was making false statements to the bank about money never being received properly or something like that. And then telling the bill collector something else too. It was clear that she was both screwing over her husband and committing some kind of fraud. Now, I did not know exactly who to call about that kind of thing, but I did mention her talking about taxes in her little plan, so I decided to call the IRS. I told them that I suspected her to be committing fraud and it reflecting on her taxes. Now I am actually just gonna pause this part of the story and jump to the other thing I did. Since her husband was totally sane, unlike her, I felt comfortable approaching him and telling him everything that I heard his wife saying. He was going through so many different emotions at once and I could see the wheels turning. He admitted to me that he thought his job was not submitting the right amount of pay and he was causing such a stink he might have gotten fired for it, not knowing that she had just been stealing some of his salary instead of paying the bills, and thus forcing him to pay the bills with the remainder of the money and not having much left over. Now, I would never want to ruin somebody's marriage, but she was already planning on leaving him anyway. I just wanted to help make sure that since it was happening anyway, that she did not get away with a bunch of his money. And yes, I know, in divorce he will probably end up having to give her some of his income, but getting that on top of a bunch she stole was just horrible to do, especially since they were married, so you would think somewhere in her mind she would feel bad about screwing him over like this. The way she talked to her friend made it seem like she got pure joy over screwing him over and getting away with things. You could hear the screaming from their house, probably 3 doors down, with the fight that they had. I did feel a bit guilty, but he was mostly the one yelling and she deserved it. I could even hear him threatening to call the police because she stole from him. The money apparently was not in a joint account but in his personal account that she had taken out of, stealing the card and going to the ATM, and I assume guessed or just knew the PIN. The police never did come and the screaming died down. To just end this part of the story before jumping back to the other one, they did get a divorce. From what I managed to gather, she was forced by the court to return all of the money that she took out of his account and put into a new private one. Then they went through the process and she only was gonna get what she was entitled to. Of course, I only knew all of this because Karen continued to think it was a smart idea to talk loudly on the phone to her friend outside. Karen, I cannot believe this. Just because he got fired and claimed it was because of me, I'm getting so much less a month than I expected. That's why I had that cushion, but they decided to swoop in and take that away from me too. Plus, I owe all that other money because the IRS found out about me trying to hide the funds, so it cannot be taxed. It's my money. I don't know why the government thinks they should get a piece of it. I should have hid it outside the country so they couldn't touch it. She pauses to listen to whatever her friends have to say. Karen: no, well, I wanted to sell the house and just split the profit down the middle. The court insisted that I cannot take my half until the mortgage is taken out. That is gonna leave me with so little. I have to call the doctor and cancel because I won't have the money for the new implants. She was talking about plastic surgery for her chest, by the way. I cut some of the conversation because I don't find it relevant and the story is already getting long. Also, yeah, her first statement kind of gives away what happened with the IRS. I actually didn't know that they had followed up with what I said until that point. Trying to find out any information about what happened there was pretty hard. I knew she was a gossip that loved to talk about herself, even if it was about issues she was having. Of course, she hated me and wouldn't tell me, but there were plenty of other neighbors. Some, like her, are just as big gossips and were willing to give other the information just to be able to talk about Karen. So anyway, the IRS did look into her money situation and found stuff that I did not even know about. Of course, they was trying to hide her husband's money under the lie of it not existing and not claiming that when it came to taxes. That was just a drop in the bucket though. Remember when I mentioned that her job was basically getting involved in pyramid schemes? Well, in order to actually make money off of them, she was scamming a lot of people that she sold to. They would send her the money and then she just would not send them the product. Even if they complained to their banks, she would by then have withdrawn the money and closed that account, or she would have given them her money through a third-party app. Opening and closing a bunch of bank accounts was very suspicious to the IRS, and it was not hard to find proof of what she was doing. Of course, you can guess that she was claiming her income was nothing the entire time and she was just a housewife. They gave her a huge fine of money that she owed them for taxes. After all was said and done, they had both moved out of the neighborhood and I was finally free of Karen. She had spent 2 years of my life pulling crap to try and get me into trouble out of pure jealousy. I did not think my revenge would end up being that good, but it felt amazing to finally stick it back to her. Helping her husband not get screwed over was just an added bonus that went along with the entire thing. And yeah, Ripe Stars, please let me know in the comments what you thought about this story. I, for one, am really happy about what happened to Karen in the end, and I just cannot imagine having an awful neighbor like this. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.